I read something. I think four of over half of Oklahoma's losses under Lincoln Riley have been after a bye week, which is really bizarre, because most teams play much better after a bye week. Obviously, you have 2 weeks to prepare for the other team. You have game plans to put into place for that long of a time. You've got not only you've got prep, but you've got things that you can look at in terms of resting your players and stuff like that, and getting everybody healthy. So very bizarre that Oklahoma has been at that spot where they've just not been as successful down the stretch on bye weeks as they could have been, as they should have been. So I think that's part of it. I think the philosophy that Oklahoma has had on the defensive side of the ball, the speed D, having smaller, quicker, faster guys on the defensive line, just all across the board, it looks like it's not necessarily working. It was one of those things where I was very hesitant to admit this, but I think Oklahoma's not as strong and tough as they really need to be. On the defensive line, all across the board. If I'm being honest, their offensive lines same way. They're not as strong as they need to be. So I think, and you're not going to hear me come on here and very very often and talk about firing coaches, firing staff members, things like that. That's not really for me to decide. I'm not I'm not a guy that just blames coaching, just in general. However, I'm not a guy that blames coaching in terms of really like this person needs to be fired, this person needs to go, things like that. But it seems pretty clear there's some kind of a shakeup that needs to happen. The strength and conditioning program isn't anywhere near what it needs to be, or where it was under Schmitty for years and years in the Bob Stoops regime. It's they're not as strong as they need to be. Powerful. Anton Harrison's a guy on the offensive line who's pretty weak. Andrew Rames kind of the same way. They don't have a lot of bulls in there on the defensive side of the ball. Really, the same thing. Perion Winfrey, for a guy of his size and his stature, he's not very strong, not anywhere near as strong as he needs to be. So, I mean, I think that's a glaring issue. Defensively, tackling has been a glaring issue for this team all season long. They've not really been able to come back for that. They've come back from that. They've not been able to. They've not really been able to be consistent and take that next step from a defensive side of the ball that I think all of us watching and anticipated them doing this year. It's been a clear regression. So I think all of those things, when you think about that, maybe I don't necessarily. I'm not the person that's going to say that they need to fire some coaches or they need to make some coaching changes here, but I think they need to take a hard, long look at the philosophy on the running game, on the offensive side of the ball, and the whole philosophy around quicker, faster defensive players, particularly defensive linemen, that allows Oklahoma just to get pushed around. And I know that Oklahoma has a talent, but looking on the field, watching that game against Baylor, it was hard to tell who the more talented team was. Just not coaching, not anything around that, just off the bus, who has the most dudes, who has the most guys that you're like, wow, that's a football player right there. And Oklahoma doesn't really have as many of those. Yes, they got talent, but I think that traditionally over the last few years, we've been saying the gap between Oklahoma and the Big 12 and the rest of the Big 12 is pretty sizable. I think it's narrowed over the last couple of years as well, but I think at the same time, it's really, I mean, in some of these games, it's close. Like it's close to see, and I think Oklahoma's been at an advantage, and but of just being able to be the better athletes and get away with some things. So that's concerning as well. And so when you take all of this into consideration, um, you know the killer instinct has not been there. There's a culture problem, and I think culturally it's just kind of a we throw our helmet down and we're Oklahoma, and we feel like that we should win championships. We should be better than you, and they're just not. I mean, they're just not at that level right now. They're not. They don't have the ability to do that right now, just because of the talent level. And